How interested were the press and the people in the business in your career until Mick Jagger came along?
Well, the press were very interested at first in me because I was so pretty.
For decades, Mick Jagger and Marianne Faithfull were remembered as a glamorous symbol of 1960s London. Young, beautiful, and wrapped in rock and roll legend. But behind the iconic images was a far darker story. Their romance was shaped by betrayal, addiction, fame, and emotional chaos. What once looked like a passionate love story became a painful public unraveling. Now, Mick Jagger's confirmation forces a closer look at the truth behind the myth and the heartbreak beneath the glamour. The hidden turmoil revealed. Behind the dazzling lights and flashy headlines of 1960s London's music scene lay a darker story few dared to tell. Mick Jagger and Marianne Faithfull's relationship was far removed from the glamorous image that the public adored. Beneath the charm and creativity was a tangled mess of emotional warfare, fueled by jealousy, struggles for control, and intense personal demons. These conflicts weren't whispered in private. They exploded into public view, shocking friends and fans alike. Marianne's early days as Mick's muse and lover seemed like a perfect match, embodying the rebellious spirit of a pivotal era. But as their connection deepened, tension crept in alongside passion. What appeared as carefree indulgence was really a precarious balance on the edge of chaos. Their fights were legendary, often wild and unrestrained, exposing the volatility simmering beneath the surface of their romance. This unstable dynamic was only magnified by the excessive lifestyle the Rolling Stones were famous for. Fame, illegal substances, and rock and roll blurred the lines between love and conflict. One moment was affectionate intimacy, the next a bitter argument filled with accusations and wounds. Their story was not just about two creative souls, but about surviving in a world that spun out of control. One defining episode that captured this chaos was the 1967 illegal substances bust at Keith Richards' Redlands estate. Marianne was famously photographed at the scene, clad only in a fur rug, becoming an unwitting symbol of the band's wild hedonism. More than a simple scandal, the event marked a turning point, a public unraveling that preceded Marianne's descent into deeper personal turmoil. The glamour quickly faded, replaced by shadows that would follow her for years. Subtle cracks in their relationship grew wider with every headline and episode of excess. Mick's rising fame only added pressure and distance, leaving Marianne feeling used and discarded. Their breakup was far from neat. It was raw and messy, charged with unresolved resentment. The emotional scars left in the wake of their time together lingered in both their private lives and public personas. Yet this rupture marked only the beginning, not the end, of the battles Marianne faced. Beyond Mick, her life became a battleground rife with fractured friendships and volatile partnerships. Jealousy and betrayal cast long shadows, fracturing connections and isolating her from many who once stood close. The glamorous life gave way to a saga of loneliness and conflict. This pattern extended even into her own family, where strained ties and clashing values deepened her internal struggles. The personal wounds Marianne carried were as much about love and loss as about identity and belonging. The complicated nature of her relationships reflected a woman shaped by emotional storms and relentless pressures, both inside and outside the spotlight. What emerges from the surface-level stories is a complex portrait of a woman caught between inspiring artistry and devastating personal battles. The public facade barely hints at the depth of turmoil beneath. The real narrative of Marianne Faithfull's life is one of beauty shadowed by pain and talent tested by relentless hardship. As Mick Jagger's long silence finally breaks, the curtain lifts on these hidden truths, revealing a world behind the music that few were prepared to see. From muse to tragedy, Marianne Faithfull sort of rose, as this teenage muse for the Rolling Stones, and it shot her into some sparkling world almost nobody could really picture. She was discovered at a party, in the middle of that vibrant, swinging London thing, And right away, her ethereal look plus that haunting voice grabbed people's attention. Somehow, she didn't just become Mick Jagger's girlfriend either, she turned into an icon of defiance, a living symbol, like she was carrying around that restless 1960s mood in her skin or something. At first, her face was all over magazine covers, and the public was totally captivated. Though then the pressure from sudden fame brought in this darker ripple. As she tried to juggle the music business demands and her messy personal life, little cracks started showing. Not all at once, but definitely noticeable. The heady blend of illegal substances and glamour began to grind her down. And for a while, the shiny pull of celebrity kept covering up the harder parts, the addiction battles that would end up shaping a lot of what came next for her. Marianne's bond with Mick really sat at the center of both her rise and her undoing, like it was sort of the same engine, just turning in two directions. When his star rose, their love story got complicated, almost knotted, with emotional neglect and jealous feelings making new rifts. At first, it felt like a fiery, moving partnership, but soon it started to sour, turning poisonous, with betrayal tucked in and power struggles showing up, kind of everywhere. The whole thing echoed the messy life around them, fast living, fast choices, until it finally slid out of control. Her reliance on illegal substances got worse after the big public moments, especially the notorious Redlands bust. The stuff that once might have been just for fun, recreational enough, became crutches for the emotional weight she couldn't carry. Addiction drained her, step by step, and it tore up her connections with other people. It formed this loop that was hard to break, like the exit kept moving. Even her career chances shrank, because her private demons basically started overshadowing her talent, and that was the part that hurt the most. Still, even through the tragedy, Marianne kept going, stubbornly trying to hold her place in the industry. Her raw, soulful performances weren't only about her musical gifts, they also showed the scars, the ones you can't really hide. She took pain and turned it into art, threading the bright moments and the collapsed parts of her life into songs that sounded haunted and somehow still resonated with people everywhere. And when she sang, her voice carried the kind of history and experience that few could ever claim. Not for real. But honestly, the public fixation on her struggles, it kind of swallowed the woman herself. Reports and rumors kept turning into this cautionary thing instead of letting her be a fully complicated person. And that storyline only got heavier once she was almost completely collapsed into homelessness, plus the loss of custody of her son. Those were the grim checkpoints in this slow spill downward. Her fall from grace looked sudden and obvious too, a stark reminder about how fame is basically a thin veneer, easily cracked. Then later, the same descent became part of her mystique, like a real paradox. Beauty alongside brokenness, almost like she carried both at once. People looked at the devastation first, yet Marianne's resilience kept showing up here and there, in bursts. Her comebacks weren't steady, they were fragile and loaded with the risk of relapse. But they still pointed to this stubborn refusal to give up, to survive, and make something new, even while the whole place is ruined. So in the end, her life story pushes back against easy ideas of celebrity. It shows the real cost behind the spotlight, not just the glittery surface. This is a narrative of more than glamour. It's wrenching, raw human struggle. From muse to tragedy, Marianne Faithfull's journey reads like a haunting testimony. The price tag of living fast and loving without holding back. That story of struggle and survival intertwines with key relationships and fierce rivalries that shaped her paths. Explosive rivalries and betrayals. Marianne Faithfull's life was marked not only by personal conflicts with Mick Jagger, but also by fierce battles with those around her, most notably Anita Pallenberg. The friendship between two of the Rolling Stones' most iconic women began with magnetic attraction and shared rebellion, but quickly soured into a bitter rivalry. Their volatile relationship was a potent mix of jealousy, competition, and simmering resentment. Set against the chaotic backdrop of rock and roll excess, their battles became almost legendary. Every interaction was charged with silent hostility, attention struggles, and power plays within the band's inner circle. This wasn't a quiet feud. Their confrontations were public, explosive, and unforgettable. Parties devolved into screaming matches fueled by illegal substances, alcohol, and festering grudges that left friends caught in the crossfire. Anita fiercely guarded her influence within the Stones' world, perceiving Marianne as a threat to her own territorial hold. Marianne, in turn, resented Anita's calculated grip on the band and her seeming effortless ability to command loyalty and attention. Their rivalry was a slow-burning fire, occasionally erupting into full-blown confrontations that scorched everyone nearby. The toxic tension between these two women extended far beyond simple jealousy. It reflected deep insecurities, wounded pride, and the emotional fallout of living in an unforgiving, high-pressure environment. Their battle for status was also a struggle for survival in a world that demanded constant reinvention and ruthlessness. This antagonism wasn't confined to their personal interaction. It rippled through the entire Stones entourage, contributing to a climate of suspicion and paranoia. Trust between allies broke down, and alliance shifted unpredictably. The band itself became a battleground as much as the world outside. Marianne's challenges with rivalries like this revealed a pattern in her life. Intense relationships that invited both connection and destruction. Old friendships decayed into suspicion, and even the closest bonds could turn venomous. Her life was a mosaic of love, betrayal, and fierce competition. Yet through this combustible environment, Marianne's spirit and talent endured. Though battered by conflict, she continued to create and perform, turning bitterness into a driving force for artistic expression. Her turbulent relationships shaped not only her pain, but also her power as an artist. This struggle for survival amid rivalry played out alongside other more intimate battles, especially with family members who challenged her very sense of self. Each fractured relationship added another layer to the complex woman behind the public legend. The dark spiral of addiction. Marianne Faithfull's slide into addiction was, honestly, one of the bleakest chapters of her life. And it got tangled up with the mess in her relationships and career. What started as recreational use in that freewheeling 1960s world sort of seemed harmless for a bit. Then it just turned into something heavier, like a crushing dependency that didn't really care. At first, the illegal substances felt like an escape, or a bit of indulgence. But then they stopped being merely a choice, and became this tyrant, dictating her every move, tightening their grip with this ruthless kind of insistence, like you couldn't reason with it. And the illegal substances part wasn't only about her health. It went further and shattered her personal world too. The vibrant muse among London's fashionable set found herself drifting further away from the life she used to know. The addiction frayed her voice, her appearance, and most painfully, her relationships. Trust deteriorated, distances grew, and it was hard for anyone to keep up. Friends and lovers grew cautious, because they couldn't really predict the chaos the illegal substances brought into her behavior and moods, not even close. Near-fatal overdoses started showing up, almost like they were following her around. Death felt close enough to touch, just a few steps away, and then, somehow, gone. Each time Marianne lived, it didn't feel like a real recovery at all, more like some thin, temporary reprieve. Rehabilitation centers gave her this brief shelter, a kind of temporary haven, but then it would all slide back into relapse again. So she got stuck in that relentless loop, the same old pattern, over and over. Even the way those clinics looked, sterile, clean, airless, was way too calm compared to the tempest beating inside her mind and her body. And behind the obvious signs, the hollow stare, the track marks, there was all this psychological damage, deeply cut in, from years of neglect, heartbreak, and self-destruction. Addiction didn't just take the surface, it hid layers of pain. Depression sat on her like a suffocating shroud. Self-loathing kept gnawing away relentlessly. That inner shadow proved just as hard to fight as illegal substances' physical grip, sometimes, honestly, worse. Still, she had these small glimpses of getting better, and she tried comebacks, but the shadow of addiction never really loosened its hold on her career. Every return to the stage came with that quiet understanding that whatever peace she found might only last a minute. Fans applauded, and it could sound like everything was fine. But underneath you could sense doubts, little reminders of old failures. Even when she sang, each lyric wasn't only talent, it carried this raw imprint of both suffering and survival, like it couldn't help but show. The public and media often seemed to lock onto her downfall, like fixed almost completely, and then talk about her as this tragic type of figure, instead of seeing a complex woman genuinely trying for redemption. That kind of one-dimensional story skipped right over the resilience Marianne showed, the real depth in her artistry, and, honestly, the courage it took to keep pushing. Her whole arc turned into a cautionary tale. But not just that. More like endurance, with artistic reinvention threaded through it. Her trials should make us remember how addiction can wreck even the brightest stars, stripping away the glamour and trading it for this desperate daily fight. Still, inside that struggle, Marianne somehow caught small, stubborn flashes of grace and change, using music as a sort of confession, and also as catharsis. Her voice, even when it was a bit frail at times, stayed as a strong testimony to her indomitable spirit. And what's more, her battle with illegal substances wasn't only a private tragedy either. It was like a reflection of the darker underbelly of a hedonistic era, where everything looked shiny but felt unstable. It showed how fame and excess, when paired with emotional vulnerability, can tangle up in the worst ways. Marianne's life became a warning, and also a lesson in the price of chasing freedom without boundaries, and then being surprised when it cuts back. As the darkness of addiction shadowed her every step, family conflicts added another layer of struggle, complicating her path toward healing. Family fractures and emotional battles. While Marianne Faithfull's public life was marked by drama and chaos, her private world was equally fraught with tension, especially with her mother, Eva von Sacher-Masoch. Their relationship was a cold battleground of clashing values and unmet expectations. Eva, a stern Austrian baroness, embodied rigid aristocratic ideals that sharply contrasted with Marianne's free-spirited, rebellious nature. Growing up, Marianne's immersion into London's bohemian counterculture was both a personal escape and a defiant rebellion against her mother's polished, controlled world. Eva's disapproval was ever present, yet unspoken, manifested in cutting critiques, emotional coldness, and a palpable distance that left Marianne feeling forever insufficient. Their conflict was not fiery arguments, but a frozen tension, a silence heavy with unvoiced disappointment. This rift between mother and daughter was a war of generations, values, and identities. Marianne's embrace of a countercultural lifestyle was seen as a rejection of everything Eva prized. Attempts at reconciliation were fleeting and fragile, often collapsing under the weight of accumulated resentment and unmet emotional needs. Over time, a wall of bitterness grew between them, brick by brick. The impact of this fractured family dynamic rippled across Marianne's life, shaping her approach to relationships and emotional connection. The absence of maternal warmth created an emotional void, fueling insecurities that mirrored the turbulence of her romantic and social entanglements. Her need for love and acceptance was often intertwined with chaotic patterns that repeated old wounds. This painful family backstory helps explain why Marianne's personal life was so profoundly marked by broken bonds and betrayals. Friendships withered into rivalries. Love turned bitter, and family ties frayed under the pressure of unresolved emotional turmoil. Each relationship seemed caught in a cycle of drawing in and pushing away, reflecting the push and pull she experienced with her mother. Marianne's magnetic personality pulled people toward her but also inadvertently unleashed the chaos that followed. She was a complex paradox, charming yet unpredictable, inspiring yet self-destructive. This push-pull dynamic often left those closest to her conflicted and strained, reinforcing a pattern of emotional distance and fractured connections. Yet amid this turmoil, Marianne's resilience quietly persisted. Despite the coldness and rejection from her family, she continued to seek meaning and identity on her own terms. Her defiance against her mother's world wasn't just rebellion, it was a fight for autonomy and self-definition. This struggle fueled much of her artistic voice and personal story. The story of Marianne and her mother is a poignant reminder of how early emotional wounds can shape a life marked by both brilliance and heartbreak. It also highlights the difficulty of breaking free from cycles of disappointment and hurt that echo across generations. These family conflicts did not just haunt Marianne privately, they were part of the larger maelstrom of rivalry, addiction, and loss that defined her existence. Lost love and lingering scars. The split between Marianne Faithfull and Mick Jagger wasn't really a clean, easy ending to some sweet love story, more like a messy unraveling, with bitterness still hanging around and unresolved ache that never quite went away. Their time together just seemed to come apart, in a kind of swirl of betrayal, emotional neglect, and resentments that were never fully said out loud back then. And what stayed after they parted wasn't just sadness, it was a complicated blend of hurt and still raw anger, the kind that kept steering how they interacted for years after. Mick's sky-high fame only made everything sharper, not softer. Once he started rising into global superstardom, Marianne found herself wrestling with a feeling of being left behind, and also kind of not seen at all. The same man who once was her inspiration now felt like he carried the very weight of what went wrong, not only between them, but even culturally, like it reflected something wider. His success kept underlining the distance, creating this practical and emotional gulf that was hard to cross, hard to repair, hard to pretend didn't exist. Their love story left these scars, kind of etched deep in both of their lives, private pains that somehow kept echoing during public appearances, and those quiet little whispered talks too. For Marianne, it felt like a constant fight to pull back her own sense of self, beyond the shadow of Mick's huge persona. For Mick, it was like a steady reminder that love can get lost inside all that noise of fame and the excess that comes with it. And even then, neither of them could fully walk away from the emotional residue. Years after the last goodbye, those echoes just kept hanging around. Marianne's struggles with addiction and personal turmoil would tangle up with thoughts of Mick, sometimes like a source of pain, other times a complicated connection that simply refused to fade. The rawness of what happened between them gave their legacy this tragic kind of weight. You could feel it. Their separation wasn't a clean cut at all, more like an ongoing negotiation of feelings, resentment braided with the memory of passion. That unresolved tension showed up in public narratives, in hearsay that traveled fast, and in those awkward near-reconciliations that never really held. In the end, their story turned into this emblem, the real price of love, when it gets entwined with rock and roll mythos, like it's part of the deal. The emotional neglect Marianne felt during and after their relationship sort of kept showing up later, and it made her more vulnerable, especially with self-worth. Yeah, that kind of thing that sticks. Those wounds weren't only about lost love, more like the feeling of being pushed aside in a world that praises appearance and achievement. And honestly, those thoughts made the chaos in her life grow louder, feeding repetitive spirals of hurt that were hard to step out of. Even with the bitterness and the distance, they both still had the signs of what they lived through. Marianne's music, and Mick's reflections too, would sometimes slip in little hints of their shared history, like an understanding that helped shape their craft, but also carried this quiet grief. Their storyline became tangled, inseparable, with both their private selves and their public image. Losing love is often something you keep to yourself, but for Marianne and Mick, fame turned it up. Every wound looked, even if they didn't mean for it to. And still underneath all the attention and the drama, there was this plain human tale. Two people shaped by passion and ruin, trying to figure out how to move past the same past they couldn't stop revisiting. From the wreckage of heartbreak and unresolved anger, Marianne found a way to turn pain into purpose, carving a new chapter through her art and resilience. Survival through art. Marianne Faithfull's journey is ultimately one of survival, a relentless fight to reclaim herself through artistic expression despite overwhelming adversity. Music became her refuge and weapon, a way to transform heartbreak and turmoil into something powerful and deeply personal. Her voice, marked by rawness and vulnerability, carried the weight of every loss, addiction, and betrayal she endured. Her art was not just performance, but confession. Each song poured forth a narrative of trauma and endurance, inviting listeners into the complicated depths of her experience. The smoky, haunting timbre of her voice conveyed emotions that words alone could not capture, turning suffering into an indelible form of beauty. Despite periods of relapse and despair, Marianne's commitment to her craft remained unwavering. She returned repeatedly to the stage and studio, often under difficult circumstances, determined to share her story. These comebacks were fragile but significant victories over the darkness that threatened to consume her. Her music resonated widely because it spoke to universal themes of pain, survival, and redemption. Fans connected not only with her talent, but with the honesty and resilience that defined her performances. Marianne became more than a tragic figure. She emerged as a symbol of endurance in the face of ruin. Her art also served as a catharsis, helping her process the wounds inflicted by love, addiction, and loss. Through her songwriting, she confronted her past and asserted control over her narrative. This creative survival was both a personal and public reclamation of self. Marianne's ability to channel anguish into expression challenged simplistic judgments about her. She revealed complexity, the simultaneous existence of fragility and strength. Her story reminded the world that survival is messy, non-linear, and requires profound courage. As she crafted new music and embraced acting roles, Marianne redefined what it meant to be a muse. Not just an inspiration to others, but a creator in her own right. Her legacy grew to encompass transformation and empowerment, transcending the pain that had once threatened to define her. The interplay of darkness and artistic brilliance in Marianne Faithfull's life is a testament to the profound power of creativity to heal and endure. All these struggles and triumphs culminate in a legacy that continues to spark controversy, fascination, and admiration, one that Mick Jagger's revelations have only brought more into focus. Legacy of conflict and inspiration. Marianne Faithfull's life story just won't sit neatly in a box, you know. It's like this muddled tapestry, stitched together from big wins and plain old tragedy, real brilliance with pain tucked inside it. And Mick Jagger's recent revelations, they basically yanked the final curtain aside, revealing a woman whose days were as stormy as Shiwi's iconic too. Behind all the glamour and the spotlight, there was this raw force of nature, somebody who left devastation on one side and inspiration on the other in her wake. Her legacy isn't either scandal or spotless heroism. It's more like a knot of contradictions that keeps her interesting, even now. She was definitely a symbol of the swinging 60s rebellious spirit, but she also carried the destructive price tag of all that era's excesses. So her story works like a reminder that real legends aren't made from perfection. They're forged in fire and cut from struggle and hardship too. The scars that marked Marianne's life, betrayal, addiction, heartbreak, didn't just haunt her. They kind of shaped her artistic voice, whether she wanted that or not. Those things gave her songs this raw authenticity, the kind that lands hard with audiences across the world. Her music turned into a vessel for her pain and her survival, like a confessional battlefield where she flips personal suffering into timeless art. And Mick Jagger's Breaking of Silence, it shines a light on the messy complexities hidden beneath their shared history. His words push back against the myths that the media and fans kept stacking up around them, and they open up a more honest conversation about the human cost of fame. This revelation, honestly, adds more layers to how we view Marianne, not only as a muse or a headline or a figure of scandal, but as a person who had to carry the heavy weight of that legacy day after day. Her story also kind of shows that delicate, fragile line between inspiration and self-destruction. Marianne's relationships, her troubles, and even her achievements, they all sketch out a portrait of someone who was never really okay with just being treated as a victim. Instead, she kept tangling with her demons, but at the same time, she wouldn't let go of her own agency and creativity. Between the heavy parts, Marianne's resilience comes through, almost like a stubborn light. She made it through near-fatal lows, harsh public judgment, and personal losses. Then somehow she kept changing herself, reinventing her whole direction. Her insistence on not being reduced to her setbacks makes the tale feel both tragic and, in the end, empowering. She rose out of the wreckage as a survivor and an artist, and her voice still manages to captivate people today. Now, Marianne Faithfull is still seen as this complicated icon, and her legacy pushes back against those simple stories about fame and raw talent. She points to a truth that greatness often comes with pain and real conflict, like it's part of the cost. Her life and her work ask us to look straight at the uncomfortable realities while also honoring the strength you can find in survival, even when it hurts. Marianne Faithfull's story teaches us that fame and artistry come with unimaginable struggles, yet also with a fierce resilience. Her journey from muse to survivor inspires a deeper understanding of the price of greatness. If you found this exploration compelling, be sure to like and subscribe for more stories peeling back the layers of iconic lives.